Hello from the Old Forge Distillery podcast studios. It's the Brian Hornback Experience, episode 169. 169. And yes, it's been a while, but we are coming to you from the Old Forge Distillery podcast studios. That's right, Old Forge Distillery, located in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. You can find them in most liquor stores, beverage stores in Tennessee. I know they just went into Georgia last week, but go to oldforgedistillery.com, O-L-D, Forge, F-O-R-G-E, distillery.com. Got a couple of bottles right behind me here. This one is their newest, the Iron Mountain. It's 80 proof. And it's their newest bourbon. They've been around now for 10 years. They're aged for 10 years. They started in 2014, so 2024, they just had their 10-year anniversary. And right here is their Old Forge Reserve. It is a straight bourbon as well. And of course, they have moonshine, they have vodka, they have rum, they have everything. As a disclosure, personally for me, if you are not someone that can consume beverages responsibly and in moderation, please don't. All right, it's been a while. Went on a vacation down into the Caribbean islands, and so we're getting back here, firing up just in time for the August 1st election. Early voting has been going on since July the 12th. It ends this coming Saturday, July the 27th. Of course, election day is on Thursday, August the 1st. Remember, every 2 years by state law, the primary is on the first Thursday of the month. I know that the national election in November is always the first Tuesday. Typically, county elections are on a Tuesday, but by state law, the primary in August is always the first Thursday. So it's Thursday, August the 1st is the primary election for federal and state primary, not the presidential. The presidential preference primary was back in March. That's when we had our county primary. And so that all happened in March. We chose the presidential preference, the county primary, and now on the first Thursday of August, we're going to have the state and federal primary and the county general. So the folks that you picked in the Republican and Democrat primaries on the county level back in March are going to be on the general election ballot August the 1st. And we're going to talk about that ballot here on the 169th episode of the Brian Hornback Experience from the Old Forge Distillery podcast studio. Let's talk about the Democrat primary first, because it's a shorter ballot, right? The first thing you're going to see on the Democrat primary ballot, state and federal primary ballot, is to find out who is going to be the first loser to Marsha Blackburn in November. There are actually 4 candidates running in the Democrat primary for United States Senate. Marquita Bradshaw, she was the Democrat nominee who ran against Bill Hagerty 4 years ago. So she's won the Democrat primary for U.S. Senate before. She's on the ballot again. Lola Denise Brown, another candidate on the Democrat primary for the United States Senate. Gloria Johnson, those of you in Knoxville know that name. She's on the ballot for United States Senate in the Democrat primary. And Sybil Miller Watkins is the 4th name for U.S. Senate on the Democrat ballot. For Congress, the one to take on Republican Congressman Tim Burchett is Jane George. She has no opponent in the Democrat primary. To take on the winner of the current seat held by Becky Duncan Massey is DeMonica Bryan. She is unopposed on the Democrat ballot. In the State House District 14, that is in Farragut in West Knoxville, is Amanda Collins. Amanda Collins ran against Jason Zachary 2 years ago. She's running unopposed in the Democrat primary again. State House District 15, that's the seat that Representative Sam McKenzie is the state representative for. He's being challenged by County Commissioner Dr. Dacia Lundy. That will be an interesting race in the fact that there's been a lot of talk about how there's dark money going on in this particular race. Dark money is money that is being expended either for or against a candidate, but neither candidate has any say or any control over what that messaging is. It's by individuals that have an interest in a particular item that could be coming up in the legislature. In this particular case, it's about voucher money. It's about Representative McKenzie's votes for or against vouchers, and it's the School Freedom Fund that is spending money against Sam McKenzie and for Dr. Lundy. Again, neither candidate in those type issues have any control or any say about what is said or what is sent out or anything. It is simply controlled by the entity that is the organization, and in this case, the School Freedom Fund. What's been funny is the people that have contacted me about dark money being in the 15th district. I'm like, you know what? That's probably the first time you've seen that in the 15th district, typically a Democrat district, right? We've seen that in Republican campaigns for years. So it is what it is. Welcome to the party. State Representative Michelle Carringer, Republican, has Lauren Carver running as a Democrat in the 16th House District. In the 18th House race, Representative Elaine Davis has a gentleman by the name of Brian Goldberg, who is unopposed in the Democrat primary to run against her in November. State House District 19, that's the Gloria Johnson. There's no one running against... hold on. Okay, I'm sorry. 19th. That's State Representative Dave Wright, okay? So he has no Democrat opponent. So provided he wins the Republican primary, we'll talk about him in a minute on the Republican primary, he'll have no challenge in November. I saw the 9 and it got me a little confused. In State House District 89, that's Representative Justin Lafferty, Republican. He has Kerry Hammond, who is unopposed on the Democrat primary ballot that will run against him in November. And then in State House District 90, Gloria Johnson, the name I mentioned to you running for U.S. Senate, guess what? She's on a ballot twice. The legislature saw this happening. They tried to adjust it in the legislature in not allowing this to happen, that someone be on the ballot twice. It doesn't happen often, but unfortunately, across the state of Tennessee, 95 counties, 126 to 140 municipalities, when you get into smaller areas, you have individuals that have a tendency to maybe be mayor, maybe be on the school board. I know that in Middle Tennessee, around Shelbyville, there was a state representative that also served on the school board. So in some places, in smaller areas, you have individuals that will serve on more than one entity. So the reason I think that bill didn't pass the legislature this year in not allowing someone to run for 2 elected positions at the same time is because there are individuals that serve in 2 roles in their districts. And so there wasn't enough support in the legislature to pass that. So Gloria Johnson is running for re-election to her House seat, District 90, and she's also running as the U.S. Senate candidate on the Democrat ballot. Again, Marquita Bradshaw has a history. 4 years ago she ran. She was successful in beating the doctor from Cookville, in being the Democrat nominee to run against Bill Hagerty. She's running again. We'll see what happens come August the 1st. There's an unexpired term for State Executive Committeeman in District 5. That is the district that Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally serves. That committeeman seat, there's a candidate on the Democrat ballot, D. Scott Hammond. And then in District 7, which is Dr. Richard Briggs' Senate District, there's a committee woman position available, and Dana Moran is running for that position, okay? That's the Democrat primary ballot. If you're a Democrat, you got one choice, really, in the U.S. Senate race. But if you live in the District 15, Sam McKenzie's district, primarily East Knoxville, then you have two choices. You have the Senate race, and then you have the state representative race with Dr. Dacia Lundy and Representative McKenzie. So that's all you got to choose from. Everybody else, I'm sure you're going to write in a bunch of names for all those people that are unopposed. And yeah, we'll talk about that later. Republican primary ballot. Let's talk about that. U.S. Senate, our Senator Marsha Blackburn has one opponent, Trey Whittam. I'm assuming it's Trey. It's Tres. Could be Trey's Whittam. For Congress, Representative Burchett is unopposed in the Republican primary. In the state Senate district, State Senator District 6, State Senator Becky Duncan Massey is being opposed by Monica Irvine. They're in State Senate District 6. Representative Jason Zachary is unopposed in the Republican primary for District 14. Justin Hurst, that's a gentleman that ran for county commission in the 1st District back in March. He came a few votes short of Charles Frazier becoming the Republican nominee for the 1st Commission District. So he is now running to take on either Dr. Dacia Lundy or Representative McKenzie. Whoever wins that primary. Justin Hurst will be the Republican choice in District 15 in November because he's unopposed in the Republican primary. State Representative Michelle Carringer represents District 16. That's a lot of North Knoxville. She's unopposed in the Republican primary. She'll have an opponent in November, a Democrat opponent. Elaine Davis finishing up her first term in District 18, primarily inner West Knoxville and South Knoxville. She's unopposed Republican primary. She'll have an opponent in November. District 19, again, that's the one, Representative Dave Wright. Provided he and his wife and a couple other people vote for him in District 19, he's got a free ride August 1st, provided at least one or two people vote for him and nobody runs as a write-in. Then he has no opponent in November, so he'll be back in the legislature. Justin Lafferty in District 89 has no opponent in Republican primary. Again, he'll have an opponent in November. And in District 90, Gloria Johnson's district, the Republicans did not put up a candidate for that seat to take her on in November. And that's interesting in and of itself because she was she was one of three that was disruptive in the House, faced ouster. She wasn't ousted, but very controversial, passes little to nothing legislation since she's been there, but she has no Republican opponent. So that is what it is. So then we move to the Knox County general election. When you vote your Republican ballot or your Democrat ballot, then you also have a county general ballot. One thing you can do is you can just go in and say, I don't want to vote in the primaries. I just want to vote in the general election. In 11 days of early voting so far, there's 14 days of early voting. Recording this on the 12th day of early voting. So in 11 days of early voting, 402 people in Knox County have chosen to only vote in the county general. Not sure why they do that. Maybe they're just not fans of parties or primaries. Maybe they just want to vote in the general election. I don't know. But 402 people so far in 11 days of early voting out of 21,960 people that have voted in 11 days. 402 of those have chosen to only vote in the general election. Let's run through that real quick. Criminal Court Judge, Division 2, the 6th Judicial District. It's in Knox County. It's criminal court. He's one of 3 criminal court judges here in Knox County. Hector Sanchez, he was appointed by Governor Lee about 1.5 years to almost 2 years ago, I think. He had to run on the next election ballot, which is now. So he had no primary opponent. He has no general election opponent, but he'll be back on the ballot when all the judges are back on the ballot again. So Hector Sanchez will be the next criminal court judge for the next few years until he has to run again with everybody else. County Commission District 1. We talked about that a little bit when I talked about Justin Hurst. Charles Frazier is the Republican nominee. County Commission District 1. He's taking on Damon Rawls. Damon Rawls, in the Democrat primary in March, beat former Commissioner Evelyn Gill. So it's Frazier and Rawls in that particular contest. That's a very heavily voted Democrat district, but Charles Frazier is representing the Republican Party in that one. Then we go to County Commission District 2. That's kind of North Knoxville. The Republican nominee is a realtor and over a North Norwood neighborhood organization. She's challenging the Democrat Courtney Durrett. Courtney Durrett was the commission chairman last year. The commission chair changes every September if commission chooses to change. Terry Hill became the commission chair September 1st of 23. And so she's the current chair. So Courtney Durrett was the chair from September 1 of 22 to August 31st of 23. And Courtney Durrett is well funded, appears to be well on her way to a second term. But Debbie Phillips is the Republican candidate, and is challenging. Interestingly enough, in that district, there's an independent. We'll talk about the 2nd district here as we talk about commission, and then when we get down to school board. The 2nd district is interesting in the fact that Courtney Durrett, when she was elected as the Democrat commissioner, it was a district that had been served by Michelle Carringer, who's now in the state house. And Michelle was a Republican county commissioner. There was a well-funded Republican candidate that ran 4 years ago. Everybody thought that Grant was going to win that race. Interestingly enough, Courtney Durrett flipped that seat for the Democrats, and she won that race in the general election against Grant. And so, again, that district has a tendency to be somewhat, I don't want to say it's even. I don't want to say it's like 50-50. But there is a closer thing between the parties there. So there's an interesting individual in the name of Ethan Grantham. Hope I'm saying your last name right. He's running as an independent for commission. So there's 3 choices in the 2nd district. He spent no money, raised no money. All his financial disclosures show $0. Not sure what Ethan's trying to do there, but he is a candidate. In District 4 County Commission, that's the one that Kyle Ward served for 4 years. Kyle chose not to run for re-election. And so Garrett Holt is the Republican nominee and Shane Jackson is the Democrat nominee. Garrett had a little bit of a contest in the fact that he had an opponent who didn't spend a lot of money, had a lot of social media stuff, but Garrett won very convincingly in the primary, where his Democrat opponent was able to sit tight on his money and during the primary. And so Shane's had a little bit more money to kind of make up for that. So that's kind of where that race is. A lot of people are saying that race could go either way based on a previous school board race in that district. We'll see. The voter turnout appears to be about in the midway in 7 days of early voting. The voting was about the same as it was 2 years ago. So we'll see where that goes. In District 5, predominantly Farragut, West Knoxville, the Bluegrass, North Shore area, along with the town of Farragut. Angela Russell came out of that Republican primary, a 5-way Republican primary. She won the primary. She faces Arthur Moore. He's a doctor. He has more money because he didn't, again, he's another one that didn't have to spend money in the primary. Angela Russell obviously did. She had 4 other opponents. But again, that's a very heavily Republican district. Then we go to District 6. That's our County Commission Chair, Terry Hill. She should be in pretty good shape against Democrat Daniel Green, a guy who I've heard or I've read has a financial background, but the dude hasn't turned in his campaign financial disclosure. So I have an issue with if you're in the financial background and you can't get your campaign financial disclosure turned in on time, it's problematic. In District 8, Adam Thompson, the Republican, faces a farmer, Charles Chandler. Interestingly enough, both of these guys are farmers. Adam's father and his mother and he had a beef farm or have a beef farm. Mr. Chandler has a bee farm, beef, cow, bee, little things that fly around and pollinate and make honey. Thompson should be okay. Again, East Knox County is very, 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 very Republican. It's where I'm from. It's where I grew up. Very, very Republican. Adam Thompson should be fine. Then in the South Knoxville, we have another independent situation. Andy Fox came out of that Republican primary against Barry Neal. Andy Fox should have an advantage as a Republican. Matthew Park, again, didn't have a Democrat opponent. Had quite a bit of money. Has received more money into the general. Very well funded. Very well organized. And then Stacey Bryan Smith, an independent. We can't go without saying that some of Andy Fox's supporters went to the election commission. Had a hearing trying to kick Stacey Bryan Smith off the ballot based on some signatures on his qualifying petition. That was unsuccessful. Stacey Bryan Smith is still on the ballot. Stacey Bryan Smith could have really capitalized on that, could have really raised some money, done some things. He really hasn't. He's still kind of laid low, although he has been probably more a thorn in Andy Fox's campaign than what Andy Fox would want, but he's still there and still going to be on the ballot. So then we go into countywide races. There's 2 countywide races. Property assessor of property. I call it property assessor. The ballot says assessor of property. Republican Phil Ballard won a close Republican primary against Jackie Raley, only by 12 votes, even after they went and pulled up the provisional ballots. It was still 12 votes difference between Ballard, who's a former property assessor, been out for 8 years, still beat the chief deputy property assessor, Jackie Raley, by 12 votes. He's the Republican nominee against Drew Harper. Drew has some rental property, works for a church as a media or IT guy. His first foray into politics is Drew Harper. County Law Director David Book. Many people thought he was going to have a really close race with former party chair Daniel Herrera. David Book won pretty convincingly, I will say very convincingly, in the primary. He now faces Jackson Fenner. Fenner's an interesting character as he ran as an independent for law director 4 years ago. He ran as a Democrat against our district attorney general 2 years ago. And now he's running as a Democrat for county law director. Not sure where that's going. Let's turn to school board. In the 2nd district, remember what I talked about with Courtney Durrett and the independent Ethan, right? Well, here we are. We're back in the same 2nd district, but this is for school board. Jennifer Owen, the incumbent, who served, I think, 8 years, is running as an independent because the state law changed. The state law changed. That first time I said state, there was something going on there. State law changed to where you have to run as Republican or Democrat. Since 1992, school board candidates ran as nonpartisan. They could say, hey, I'm a Republican, but on the ballot, they were nonpartisan, right? So now we're running primaries. Jennifer, predominantly, I would think, identifies more as a Democrat, but she chose to run as an independent. She didn't want to declare herself as a Democrat or a Republican, and so she's run as an independent. Ann Templeton is running as a Democrat. Don't know much about her, haven't met her. Up until last week, really haven't talked to anybody who knows her, but talked to a friend of mine who says that he knows her. He should be pretty solid, but she's the Democrat. And then we have a gentleman, a pastor, Pat Polis. He's a Vietnam veteran. He's a former retired pastor, I believe, from the Methodist Church. He runs an independent as well. All three races are fairly well competitive financially. And so, we'll see what shakes out there. Without a Republican on it, it's kind of interesting to see what that district will do when they have a choice of a Democrat and two independents. So I'm not sure really, I don't want to say a lot of people, but most people will kind of stick in a column unless there's a compelling reason that takes them out of a column. And so, that the Republicans are going to be trying, they need to do their homework in the second school board district. But again, I think Courtney Durrett, the Democrat, has a pretty well advantage over Debbie Phillips. So, I'm not sure what happens there. Catch my breath for a minute. And then school board in the 3rd district, that's kind of Cedar Bluff going over into the Merchants area, like Amherst Elementary, over off what we call Western Avenue or Oak Ridge Highway. Angie Gothert won a competitive, I won't even call it a competitive primary. Angie won that Republican primary convincingly, and she's still battling her Republican opponent. Her Republican opponent's still, I guess, sour grapes. Can't believe that they lost, and so they're still saying some things on social media. That's okay. She faces a Democrat, Pat Fontenot Ridley, who apparently is just retired, I think, as a gym teacher. So hope the 3rd district does right and elects Angie Gothert. 5th district, that's the seat that 20 years ago I was elected actually 24 years ago I was elected in 2000. I was elected to serve. I served for 4 years on the school board for the 5th school board district. August 31st of 2024 will be 20 years since I left. And so that is between Republican Lauren Morgan, who was fortunate enough that Republicans looked and they saw that Lauren was their candidate, and they said there's nobody that needs to run against Lauren. She's a mother of 3. She's married to Tommy. She's been very involved in the schools. She's going to represent the district very well. She has an opponent, Terry Whitaker, who says she's a teacher. She's done some private teaching, that kind of thing. But again, Lauren will be good. Travis Wright in District 8. Mike McMillan, the former school board member up there, passed away the first of the year. Once there was no Democrat running for that school board seat. And so once the primary was over, the county commission went ahead and put Travis in. So technically he's serving, but come September 1, he'll get to start beginning his first full term. He's gotten a few months on the ballot. In the town of Farragut, we have a couple of alderman seats. Louise Pavlin. When they talk about Alderman Ward 1, what you really want to think about is if you're standing on Kingston Pike, I would suggest you do this late at night, not in the middle of the day or in the morning. If you're standing on Kingston Pike, and it doesn't matter if you're looking east or you're looking west, what's on the north? Well, it might. Anyway, the north side, what I would call the interstate side of Kingston Pike, is Ward 1, okay? Louise Pavlin is term limited. She can't run again. Alexander J. Kane, Alex Kane, is C-A-I-N, is running, as is Jeffrey Devlin. Jeffrey Devlin has been involved in the town, serving on planning commission, those type things. Alex Kane's been involved in the schools, particularly with the Farragut High School football program, as a coach and that type of thing. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm not exactly sure. I know that Alex typically has a pretty well Republican voting record, and Jeff appears to have more of a Democrat voting record. Not sure that matters because this is our last bash. Well, This is our next to last bastion of nonpartisan races. City of Knoxville's nonpartisan. Town of Farragut's nonpartisan as well. Then in Ward 2 would be on the south side. So again, if you're standing on Kingston Pike, that would be the side that is opposite the Interstate 40. Drew Burnett, the current alderman, is running for re-election. He has opponent Randall Roberts. Their voting records would appear to be the same. Both are typically appear to be Republican. And then in the state general election, yeah, that's another complicated. Two things on the state general. The governor was able to appoint, as I mentioned to you with Hector Sanchez, the governor was able to appoint a couple of people to the Supreme Court, and they were confirmed by the legislature. So those people are Dwight Tarwater, a former attorney from Knoxville, and another person on the Court of Criminal Appeals. Supreme Court went to Dwight Tarwater, Knoxville attorney. Court of Criminal Appeals in the Western Division, that would be the Memphis side, it was Matthew Wilson. Both of those were appointed by the governor, confirmed by the legislature, and so they have to be on a retain replace. That's how in the state of Tennessee we either retain a judge on the appellate level or on the Supreme Court level, or replace them. The only time that that's been done was in the mid-90s when Penny White, who had said some things controversial to the death penalty, there was a legitimate effort to replace Penny White based on her statements on the death penalty, and so she was replaced. Everybody else has always been retained, and so I will leave that up to you, the voters, to decide. Wow, that took roughly 32 minutes to go through the primary and general election ballot. So this is episode 169. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to be back hopefully soon, within the next couple of days, to do 170. We'll continue to talk about politics until we get past August the 1st. But I'll try to, on the next one, on 170 in the next couple of days, kind of talk about what's going on locally. But for that, I'm going to say from the Old Forge Distillery Podcast Studios, see you on 170.